Okay, now we're going to convert a rectangular equation to polar form. And notice this is a parabola. This parabola would be facing this direction because it's x is equal to y squared. So that's considered a form of a conic. So, and we also need to remember that x is equal to r cosine theta and y is equal to r sine theta. So I'm going to convert the x's and the y's. And we know when we're finished with this, sometimes that's the difficult part. We just start writing a bunch of stuff and we get confused as to when we're finished. When we have r to the first power is equal to stuff on the other side, assuming you did the other stuff correctly, that is when you're finished. So we rewrote everything. X is r cosine, y, because y is squared, the r will be squared and the sine will be squared because there's both parts. The other way you could do it is r sine theta, which is the y, squared, and then the squared would go to the r, the squared would go to the sine. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by 3 to get rid of that denominator. All right. Well, eventually we want to get the r squared by the r by itself. Well, this side has an r, this side has an r squared, so I'm going to divide both sides by r. And then that will cancel, and that will cancel. That also will mean I'll need to divide both sides by sine squared. And then that will give us the r by itself. So we divide both sides by sine squared. When we divide both sides by r, this r cancels and that r cancels, giving us r. Okay, so now what can we do with that? So even though I technically said we're finished, we can simplify this further. Because technically, r is equal to stuff, but we need to simplify this further. Since that's cosine over sine squared, we're going to write that as two separate fractions. We're going to write that as 3 times cosine over sine times 1 over sine. Well, cosine over sine, if you look at your identity sheet, is the same as cotangent theta, and 1 over sine is the same as cosecant theta. And now what you have is r is equal to 3 cotangent theta cosecant theta. And now you've finished converting from rectangular to polar form. Now let's go from polar to rectangular. And remember, x is equal to r cosine, r is equal to r sine. So I think the first thing that I did here, and then remember r squared is equal to x squared plus y squared, or r is equal to the square root, but we're probably not going to want to deal with square roots. So the first thing I did was I multiplied both sides by r so that we get this r squared, so I can convert the r squared to x squared plus y squared. So that's what I did. I just multiplied both sides by r. And when I did that, the r gets distributive. So this becomes r tangent, r secant. Okay. So let's see what we have. And again. All right. So now I have r squared is equal to 4r sine over cosine, 1 over cosine. I just broke tangent into sine over cosine. Secant is 1 over cosine. Well, I want to get rid of this denominator, so I'm going to multiply both sides by cosine squared theta. Okay. Well, now that you have r squared cosine squared theta, well, think about that. That means the same as r cosine theta squared, and r cosine is x. So we now can rewrite r cosine theta. I think I just wrote that more plainly. Sorry about that. Since the cosines canceled, we're left with r sine, and now we can start converting. R squared cosine squared is x squared, and r sine is y. Well, we want to get y by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 4. Y is equal to, y is equal to x squared over 4, and that will be an upward facing parabola. All right, that's it for this one.